University of Bath, and Professor Alex Subramanian from Federal University of Paraíba, and Professor Luciano Costa also is in the jury here. So thank you very much for coming from so far away and for being here in person. It's quite rare nowadays to have such a board everyone in person, so I'm quite happy and I feel really honored for that. Thank you very much. So let's start with the presentation of Alex. Alex, you have 30, 40 minutes to do the presentation. After that, we start.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you, Professor Pedro, and thank you, the board, for being here. Yeah, it's an honor to present the results for my master's research with you. Okay, so this research is entitled "The Robust Pickup and Delivery Problem with Time Windows," and in this research, we address the pickup and delivery problem with transportation systems consisting of delivering goods from a location of collection and delivering them in a location of delivery. In such transportation systems, sometimes uncertainty is common, so dealing with uncertainty in transportation systems should be addressed. In this case, sometimes the complete knowledge of the distribution, probability distribution is not completely known, so what we can rely on is in an estimative of the worst case value of these uncertain parameters. So in this case, we recall to robust optimization. So robust optimization deals with this uncertainty in a way of guaranteeing a solution that is remains feasible for any deviation in an infeasible data. So the goal of this research project is to apply robust optimization approaches in the pickup and delivery problem. In particular, we address the pickup and delivery problem with time windows. In this problem, the idea is to plan a set of routes with minimum cost, minimum routing cost. The idea is to serve all transportation requests from each request consists in a pickup location and a delivery location. We can represent it in a graph, so we can call a pickup node and a delivery node. The idea is to transport the demand of pickup locations to delivery locations. And we must do so by respecting the capacity of the vehicles and the time windows of each location, or if it's made, each node. And here we consider that demands and travel times are uncertain. But instead of knowing the complete knowledge of the probability distribution, we define this uncertainty in intervals. So for demand, we rely on two values. So for the demand parameter, we rely on O bar and O hat to define these intervals. This interval is defined, O bar is the central or nominal value, and O hat is the deviation value from this number. So with these two values, we can define the interval in which the realization of the uncertain data is contained in. And since the demand realization is defined for each request, and each request consists in a pickup location and a delivery location, we model the demand in a pickup location and a delivery location in this way. The pickup location has a positive value, and the delivery location has a negative value of demands. And both of these values must be matched, must be exactly equal in absolute values. For travel time, the travel time realization is also defined using intervals, and we also define T bar and T hat to build these intervals, and also the realization of this of the travel time HR is defined within the interval. And these realizations now introduce the uncertainty sets. These uncertainty sets are finite sets that contain all uncertain data realizations. So all anticipated uncertain data realizations. And in this work, we consider the cardinality constrained uncertainty set. The cardinality constrained uncertainty set is defined with using a threshold of the number of uncertain data of uncertain components that are allowed to deviate in the same simultaneously. So for demand uncertainty, we define gamma cube as the number of requests that are allowed to deviate simultaneously. And we use to define the uncertainty set the variable psi, and psi will tells us the level of deviation of each request. So here in the definition of the demand uncertainty set, we have the pairing property, so we match the realization of the demand of pickups and delivers with using the same psi, and the number of demands that are deviated from their nominal values are bounded using gamma cube. For the travel time uncertainty, we build the uncertainty set in the same way. We build the uncertainty set in the same way. We use gamma t as the number of arcs that are allowed to deviate simultaneously, and we use psi t to tell us the level of deviation in which each arc have attained. This uncertainty set has no pairing requirement, and the number of arcs are bounded by gamma t. So the idea of our methods, we need to come up with methods that solve the problem for all demand realization that matches these conditions. So we have two approaches for dealing with this uncertainty. The first one is a linearization approach in which results in a compact, robust counterpart formulation. Compact, we say compact, robust counterpart formulation, a formulation that has a polynomial number of variables and a polynomial number of linear constraints. And the second approach is a cutting plane approach. The second approach is a cutting plane, which results in a formulation that has a polynomial number of variables. However, it has an exponential number of constraints. Both these methods are developed on top of a compact formulation for the deterministic variant. And this formulation was proposed in 2017 and has a good performance in MIT solvers of general purpose. In this formulation, we want to minimize the routing costs, the total routing costs. We have the degrees, we have the degree constraint. It tells us to only visit each location once. We have the pairing constraints, which guarantees us that the pickup location and the delivery location are visited by the same vehicle. We have the capacity constraints, which guarantees that the vehicle capacity is not exceeded at any point, at any node. And we have the time windows constraints to ensure that each location time windows is not violated. The last constraint here, constraint time, is a constraint to ensure the precedence. So the delivery node is visited after the pickup node. So let's roll back to the linearization approach. The linearization approach will be based on this formulation, and it relies on a definition of recursive equations to check whether a solution, a road solution, is robust feasible. So we need to propose recursive equations to check for road solutions robust feasible. And with these recursive equations, we explicitly incorporate them into the formulation that I just showed you. So first, let's show you the recursive equations. So for demand uncertainty, we have proposed these recursive equations in which recursive equations 10 tells us we will calculate the worst case vehicle load at each UJ node when up to gamma requests have deviated from their nominal value. So in these recursive equations, we can see that the first case is when the node is the depot, so we have no load, and the two following cases tells us calculates the worst case vehicle load for pickup nodes, and the last two cases calculate the worst case load for delivery nodes, the worst case load for delivery nodes. You can note that we have introduced a set, a set that tells a keep track of which pickup nodes have deviated from their nominal values. Because we are considering a path from the depot to the depot, a complete path, and it's a feasible PDP-TW path, we visit first the pickup node and after the delivery node of a single request. So when we arrive at the pickup node, we calculate these two cases and we fill the set W if the pickup have deviated in these two cases. So which is indication when we arrive at the delivery node, we will have the indication if the demand is not in their worst case, or is it, yes, it is in the worst case. This is for the demand uncertainty. For the travel time uncertainty, the travel time modeling of the PDP-TW is actually did in the same way as in the VRP-TW. So these recursive equations are exactly the same as for the original paper. So these recursive equations are the same. And to incorporate all these recursive equations into the formulation, we do the following linearization. So this constraint will calculate the load at each vehicle, of the vehicle at each node. Constraints 13 and 14, you can see that is quite similar to the one that is for the deterministic case. Constraints 15 are used to calculate the worst case value, the worst case vehicle load at pickup nodes. And constraints 16 are used to calculate the worst case load at delivery nodes. You can see that we model the calligraphic W set as a W variable, and this variable is calculated as follows. We have the three sets, and this variable is a binary, which indicates if the request H have deviated from its nominal demand. To incorporate the recursive equations for travel time, we do exactly the same as in the original paper, with the exception of constraints 24, which deals with the precedence constraints. So this is the linearization formulation, linearization-based formulation. For the constant-based formulation, we also initialize the formulation with the PDP-TW model for the deterministic variant, and we check whether a solution, we guarantee that a solution of this formulation, a solution is robust feasible using these two constraints. For capacity constraints, we use rounded capacity inequalities, and for time windows constraints, we use the feasible path elimination constraints. We implement these two constraints in a branching cut using a branching cut algorithm. Both these constraints have an exponential number of constraints. So first, for the demand uncertainty, for the rounded capacity inequalities, you can see that from this example we have the circle nodes are pickup nodes, and the squared nodes are delivery nodes, and nodes of the same color are from the same request. So the RCI, or the rounded capacity inequalities, provides us a lower bound on the number of vehicles that are needed to serve a certain subset of customers S. And this lower bound of the number of vehicles is calculated based on the total demand of this set, which is R of S. So you can notice from this image that the request in line has both pickup and delivery nodes in the same within S. So we can see that even though they are in S, their demands should not be considered because their realization cancel each other. So we notice that we can just calculate, we can just consider the nodes there that their corresponding pickup or delivery location are not within S. So with this, we introduce the unpaired definition, in which unpaired pickup nodes are the set of pickup nodes that are in S, but their delivery nodes are not in S. And the unpaired delivery nodes are the set of delivery nodes in which their pickup nodes are not in S. So with this, we can see that we must collect the vehicles that serves the set CS should collect the demands of these two nodes and transport them to outside of us. And also, to deliver this, both these demands, we should collect their demands outside of us and carry them to and bring them to inside of us. So we can not only consider disregard the complete requests that are in S, but also we can consider these unpaired sets separately. So what we did was we proposed this way of calculating the worst case vehicle load of this set S, which is a subset of customers, any subset of customers with more than two nodes, by calculating separately the unpaired pickup nodes and unpaired delivery nodes. So the left-hand side of this maximization, of this max operator, we calculate the nominal demand of the unpaired pickups and the maximum deviation among them. And for delivery nodes, we calculate the nominal demand of them and the minimum deviation, because their deviation is negative. So this is the robust grounded capacity inequality which we proposed. And for infeasible paths to ensure time windows, I have brought here an example. So consider the path from 1 to 5. Above, on top of the nodes, we have the time windows. So on the opening and the closing time of the time windows. And below, we have the worst case arrival time. This worst case arrival time is computed using the recursive equation that I have shown. So in this case, you can see that we leave at the opening of the time windows of 1, and we arrive at 5, 2 units of time later after the time windows have closed. So this path is infeasible. However, we could prohibit this path using a no-good cut, a non-equal cut. However, you can see that it's possible that this infeasible path did not originate in the node 1, at the node 1. So what we do is to find a node before the node was that have the time windows violated, and we check which node have the first node that have that has these conditions satisfied, in which we guarantee that even if leaves this node at the opening of the time windows, we do not arrive at node 5 on time. So this is called the minimum feasible path, and we apply the tournament constraints, which is a lifting of the no-good constraints into this path. So we have this constraint. The set I contains all minimum feasible paths, and the set L is used to ensure that the default arcs related to the arcs related to the tool is considered only once. So we have these cutting plane formulation, we have proposed them. We use the constraints for the deterministic variant, and we also incorporate constraints 26 and constraints 27 to ensure capacity and time windows robustness. We implement it in a branching cut manner, so we separate these constraints in a fractional solutions only at the root node, and at each algorithm we run for each constraint, we incorporate the 50 most violated cuts. Now, what we do is to analyze, to assess the performance of each approach. So we ran a set of computational experiments. We coded everything in C++ and solved using Gurobi. The time limit was set to 1 hour. And the preprocessing stage, at the preprocessing stage, we have carried out an arc elimination procedure, an initial pool of inequalities, and a simple initial solution. This preprocessing stage is done exactly the same for both methods. And we call RPDP1 as the linearization formulation implemented with Gurobi, and RPDP2, TW2, as the cutting plane formulation implemented with the branching cut algorithm. The instances in which we tested these methods were adapted from the deterministic instance from the literature, and these instances have different levels of capacity, different levels of time windows length. The number of requests varies from 5 to 75, so we can reach almost 150 nodes in an instance. And the deviation was set, and to incorporate uncertainty, we have incorporated deviation, which is the percentage of the nominal value in which we build up the interval, which is 10, 20, and 30%. The budget of uncertainty, which balances which is gamma, balances the conservatism, is set to 0, 1, 5, and 10. And for each deterministic instance, we have resulted with 27 instances, with 27 instances each. So in total, we have 1,644 instances. So first, let's see an overall results. So in orange, we have solutions for the results for RPD-PTW1, and in purple, we have solutions, the results for RPD-PTW2. We can see that RPD-PTW found more optimal solutions than the RPD-PTW1, and we can notice that among the solutions among the results for RPD-PTW2, we have found that we found more optimal solutions for the cases which we have demand uncertainty, but much less optimal solutions for which we have travel time uncertainties for RPD-PTW2. However, for RPD-PTW1, we have more optimal solutions for travel time and less optimal solutions for demand uncertainty, and also more optimal solutions for both uncertainties. We also can see that for RPD-PTW1, for demand uncertainty, we have found almost half of the instances we have reached memory limit for almost half of the instances in the demand uncertainty set. While for travel time uncertainty, we didn't reach memory limit even once. And for RPD-PTW2, we have reached memory limit for just a few instances for travel time uncertainty and both uncertainties. Now analyzing the scalability of each formulation, we have these two charts that shows the number of requests from 5 to 75. On top, we have the percentage of optimal solutions. We have found optimal solutions for all instances up to 20 requests. And from 25 requests onwards, we have found consistently more optimal solutions with the RPD-PTW2, with the only exception of the 35 requests. And and the chart on the bottom relies on the ratio. This ratio tells us about the quality of the solution at the end of the optimization. So you can see that the RPD-PTW2 has, this percentage, has better solutions at the end of its optimization procedure, compared with RPD-PTW1, which reaches almost 150% worse solutions. Now about computational time. So these charts shows us the average computational time for each level of uncertainty, and on top left we have the results for demand uncertainty, top right we have the results for travel time uncertainty, and in the bottom we have results for both uncertainties. We can see that for demand uncertainty and both uncertainties, the RPD-PTW2 has required a significantly less computational time than RPD-PTW1. However, for travel time uncertainty, the difference is insignificant almost. They have performance of quite similar. And also we can see that for demand and both uncertainties, we can see that there's a trend of descending as the level of uncertainty grows. However, for travel time uncertainty, this forecasting is not the same. It grows, the required computational time. Now, we do a robustness analysis. For this robustness analysis, we analyze two metrics. The first is price of robustness, which computes the additional cost of a robust solution, which is basically the distance from the optimal robust solution to the optimal deterministic solution. And we have a risk, the metric of risk. And this risk is the probability of the solution becoming infeasible. This risk is computed using a Monte Carlo, via Monte Carlo simulation. For each solution, we have generated 10,000 scenarios of data realization, and this this demand and travel time realization is follows a uniform distribution within the interval that is given for each instance. So here we show three charts of price of robustness and risk. So as far right we go, we have a robust solution that has more cost, is costly, has a cost higher than the deterministic one. And as far high we go, we have a solution that has more risk to becoming infeasible. On top, we have the three charts varies in terms of deviation. On top, we have 10% deviation. Bottom left, we have 20% deviation, and bottom right, we have 30% deviation. From this chart, we can see that for demand uncertainty, which is the series in light blue, we can see that for both, for all cases of deviation, we reach risk zero with about 8% additional cost for the robust solution. However, for travel time uncertainty, which is the red series, we can see that as the deviation grows, the price of robustness, the additional cost that we incur to have a risk zero solution, grows from about 1% with 10% deviation, about 5% for 20% deviation, and about 25% for 30% deviation. So, in conclusion, we have introduced the robust pickup and delivery problem of time windows for the first time in the literature with uncertain demands and travel times. We have provided recursive equations and closed form equations to calculate the worst case vehicle load. These form equations and recursive equations were used to propose a compact formulation and a branch and a cutting plane formulation. The cutting plane formulation was implemented using a branch cut algorithm for solving the RPD-PTW. We can see from the results that the compact formulation have performed effectively in some cases. However, we can see that the branching cut outperforms the compact formulation in the majority of instances. The robustness, the results for the robustness analysis, we can see that a robust solution sometimes is obtained with few additional costs in many cases. And these results that I have presented, which sum up to the paper, is under review for publication as we speak. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm looking forward for the docs.
Thank you, Alex. Time. We'll now start the second part of this defense, where the members of the jury will ask questions. We have no time limit, no number of limits on the number of questions, so feel free. You guys can bring the questions. Usually we start with the member that is the farthest one, the farthest institution, but today I'll change a little bit because Professor Maria Vadana is part of this research. She was the supervisor of Alex during this internship abroad. And since then, she's been following all the research, so thank you, Maria, for that. Yeah. And so, because of this, I'll start with the second farthest. It's Professor Anand Subramanian.
He's also from the same place.
He's a little bit younger. So, thank you very much. As I said, I'm really honored that you accepted this invitation. I'm right here in person. I cannot believe that. And so, thank you very much. And
thank you very much, Pedro and Alex, your advisors for the invitation. Also, I'm very happy to be in São Carlos, more in the workshop. I can talk a bit more, but now let's focus on your work about this, about the spoken word. So it's really an honor to be here. You did a very good presentation. I'm usually used to being the first to speak because being João Pessoa, you were very likely to be the most recent member, right? This time, yes. This time I was defeated by Maria, but Valencia is also part of the work. So yeah. So I'm used to being the first person. That's quite the normal procedure for myself. But anyway, so you did a very good presentation. I noticed that in your middle name, if you take the N name in the middle, you have Paraíba.
It is not a coincidence. Probably I have all my life worked for that.
Yeah. So according to Fernando, you deliberately put that so we can, be more connected somehow. So yes, you delivered a very good talk. You speak very good English. That's very, very nice. You definitely have a master's work here. It's relevant. It's even original to the point of being relevant enough to be considered for publication in EJON, right? I assume you have passed the technical screening. It's under review, so it means that it has merit enough to be evaluated in such a early market. So I'll start making very few comments and then skipping to the questions later on, right? So, so my advice regarding your literature review is maybe try to first, and you did that actually, by presenting an overview of pickup and delivery problems in general. You know how confusing it can be because there are three main classes of PDPs, right? Mm-hmm. One is the one you're studying, that's one-to-one, and then you have those related to bike sharing problems, right? For example, so it's part of the family of one PDTSP problems where you take goods from one node and deliver to other nodes, and there are the one-to-many-to-one, which are the BRP with sometimes different delivery, where you leave empty and return empty to the depot. I'm sorry, you leave with everything you have to deliver and come back with everything you have picked up, and you can do that simultaneously or not. So this overview is nice, right? But I think you can maybe dedicate a specific subsection to the one-to-one PDPs. That you can find out not only the PDPW, but also the DARP, like the data problems, which is it's a closely related problem, and the difference you have to add maximum constraints that makes those constraints make the problem really challenging, right? I will not bug you a lot when it comes to write typos and everything because it's very well written, the document. I was looking for something, but overall it's really been carefully written. Only minor details. For example, nowadays we use branch cut and price instead of branch and cut and price. So maybe we can change that, and then some typos in the name of some authors like Pascal Van Hentenich. I think there is one thing missing, and basically nothing much I could find. I could find honestly. You could add. I think one thing that I missed is I think you could add illustrations, even to describe the problem. Because again, when you think about PDP, I think it's important to be very, very clear, right? Because we from the routing community we're familiar with this type of problem, but someone that's just starting and it starts seeing and then it says 1 to 1 and 1. Yeah. But then if you put at least some illustration, it at least removes some ambiguities and things like that, right? So that's one thing that I would consider doing. Also for the uncertainty stats, if you think you can decide with your advisors, if it's interesting to put, the polytope, the polyhedron, right? If it's interesting, just you can take a very, very small example, put the gamma as 1, and then work with 3 customers, and then you can do that. Okay. Maybe you can, because you describe that mathematically, that's perfectly fine. But again, if I understand that it's not your goal to provide an extensive let's say a survey or something that your document is not something, it's not a document that one will look to start studying the problem from scratch, right? But at the same time, for the sake maybe of completeness, it could be interesting to consider, right? But again, it's not something that is, I would say it's mandatory. It's just an option. And then I was discussing with Ivo Malheiros. Ivo Malheiros, Pedro knows well, and Maria met him also. He's a PhD student of Michael Voss, and he works at the Thompson in France, so he's a PhD student at the University of Montpellier, and he's working on process optimization, and I exchanged some ideas with him regarding the work. Just one thing that he wanted to make sure, it's probably right, but regarding expression 3.1.1, just to be sure, when you're describing the cardinality constraint uncertainty set for the demand, both for delivery and pickup nodes, you were adding, right?
Yes.
So you don't, it's correct, right? It's not a typo, right? It's not like in delivery you don't have to subtract.
Can you say things about the...
Because you have Q tilde plus Q hat in both cases for pickup and delivery.
Oh, okay.
So is it right?
Yes. Can I?
Yeah, if you can just elaborate more on the delivery side, why it works by adding.
Okay, perfect. The idea of this is because the realization of the demands are modeled for requests, right? So each request will have the pickup node and the delivery node, and as we model them, the pickup node with the positive value of the request and the delivery node with the negative value of the demand, consequently their deviations would be negative as well. So the realization, the second part here, okay, we have Q tilde then for all I in P, and then for all I in D, the realization of the delivery tilde I, Q tilde, will be negative. So the Q hat is negative, and the Q bar is negative, and the Q hat is also negative. So the realization is the pickup and the delivery realization, demand realization are exactly the same, but in absolute values.
Right. Okay. Yeah, makes sense. I just wanted to check. I knew it was probably right, but so I will ask questions later on, but now I'll just make comments regarding your computational results. I think I know you have experimented with a lot of instances, and it's common when it comes to PDDW. At times I find it a bit counterproductive because you just run a bunch of experiments and you kind of lose some insights, because as a lot of the research in routing and the field has been driven by trying to solve, close the gap or solve some particular instances, and then that kind of drives the field and adds that sense of competition, and maybe you can get some details and some insights because by trying to solve non-open problems, right? When you're solving a bunch of problems, you just run the experiments and you kind of lose track of what's going on, depending on the characteristics of the instances. Then you group into classes and you take the average values. That's perfectly normal. Maybe you can put at least in a repository or as appendix the full results, I mean, for literally every instance. That's nice. Also, I don't know if you have to run that again, but maybe later, I would report more information. So I would report, let's say, considering this more complete report, in which you are reporting for each individual instance. I would add, for example, the root time spent on running the root node, the root gap. And now this is a bit tricky because you might not have a primal solution when you solve that, right? So if since you're now proposing the problems, and I know you don't have in hand a heuristic that ensures that you'll have a feasible solution every time, but at least when it's available, you can take not the current. If you're able to later find a primal solution, then you can use that value to compute the gap. Okay, that's an option too, right? The size of the tree, I think, is interesting too, just to have an idea how it will grow, and then you can even compare with the compact formulation and the version cut. You can see if you have right, because I assume that in the compact formulation, the linear relaxation becomes more heavy to dissolve, and then you may not be that effective. Whereas when you do a version cut, you might be able to re-optimize and go further in the tree, and maybe that can also favor, or how much you are maybe losing or not in terms of root relaxation by using the cutting plane. Also, I'm not sure if you guys consider combining the things, right? Maybe adding the cuts to the first formulation. I know that's an option. At least, and then the thing is, when you have 1,600 instances, like many would consider, let's have to run and all of that.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe consider a subset of more challenging ones and try to be more expensive in that regard. And then one thing that's important is to have an idea of the average number of cuts of each type that have been included, right? Also, trying to run with one, just considering one family of colleagues, and you need the capacity, and you actually need both in order to have a complete formulation, right?
Yes, to have a spaceable solution.
Right, yeah, I understand that. But anyway, just to have an idea where it violates more, that depends on the class of, if the instance class and so on, right? So I think all of this might give you some insights on what to do, and also for who's reading the work, and even if you have the chance to later include that in your review, that would encourage people to, because if they see, wow, in this, there are a lot of instances that I think we can improve together, right? And then you see the tables, and then maybe you feel more tempted. Whenever you see the results are detailed, and you have that information regarding every single instance, later if you want to do some further experiments, even statistical tests comparing methods, that would be very useful. So I think if I were to insist on something, would be to go into that direction with what you have right now. Right. So these are basically some general comments, and I'll ask some questions. I already asked one, but so the first one is like, I know that you have used pre-processing.
Yes.
And that's very important to remove arcs. That's a must. That's a go-to when it comes to any of your PE time windows. In general, you can benefit from that. But I know that there are other types of pre-processing. For example, have you considered timing the time windows? I'm not sure if you have done that.
We have tried it first, but then we got on mind that we could somehow lose an analysis regarding the time windows, how loose or tight are it, and probably a way to go was to do not consider the time windows, but we did that an early stage of the research.
Right, because I think you can inherit pretty much everything that has been done for the deterministic case.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So because you're solving relaxed, so the scaling equals to zero, right?
Yes.
So you can. Yeah. So I'll ask other related question later, but before that, are you separating? Are you applying your cutting plane scheme to virtually to all fraction solutions across the tree, or you stop at a certain level and then separate only the integer solutions?
We fractional solutions we separate only at the root node, and for integer solutions is all.
Yeah,
solutions.
right. I think you described something like this, but I wanted to confirm. Maybe you could go fractional up to the 5th level, 7th level. I had some good experience, because you know that every gain you have in the upper levels of the trees can avoid you to branching further down, right? So maybe you can consider doing that. I know there are plenty of options to play around, but this is just to again see if with what we already have so far, maybe we can do something like that.
Okay.
One question I have is if your method struggle to obtain feasible solutions.
Uh, yes, in the early developments of methods, we have struggled to find optimal solutions, feasible solutions, initial feasible solutions, but then we decided to go for a simple heuristic solution and run everything with this heuristic solution. So this simple heuristic solution, I think it's the problem, the computational results actually, section probably the last paragraph of chapter 5,
Yes.
before section 5.1. We included basically it's a simple heuristic. We just sort the node by cost, the requests by cost, and incorporating the node in the root complete requests. So the pickup node and the deliver node are visited exactly together in a way. And whenever we violate time windows, we start a new group. So
Right.
it's a really simple heuristic, and with this one, we run it for the worst case. So when all uncertain parameters have their worst case values, so we are guaranteed a feasible solution for the problem.
Right. But even with this heuristic, was it still every time we could find a new solution?
Yes, with this solution we could find it.
Because you don't have a, do you have a limit on the number of vehicles?
No, we do not.
So then you could arbitrarily keep on adding.
Keep on adding.
Yeah. But then it's supposed to have a limited.
Yes, it could be 30. Yes.
Right? No, please note that I'm not asking you to devise a very sophisticated heuristic. I just wanted to know, because one thing that I've come to realize is whenever you are trying really, to solve, really solve the instances, and it's, I mean, super normal to rely on good primal bounds, right? And even if you think about all those fancy pressure price algorithms, they have solved many instances, but then they do that because they need for reduced cost fixing and other things, right?
Okay.
So it's maybe your method can have better potential if you could benefit from primal bounds.
A good initial solution.
Yeah. So then we maybe you can talk even to Eve or someone from our group. We might have some code that is more or less connected to what you're doing, and there might be not so, because on every line of business it might be it creates a mess methodologically speaking. Okay, but there could be a chance that it's not so complicated to code, and then maybe depending on how you guys how lucky you guys are in the reviews, and if it's necessary to improve, maybe there are some alternatives there.
Okay, perfect.
So I wonder if you guys have considered using the two-path cutting algorithms.
Okay, yes, I have seen them in Dropkiss paper 2009, and the inequalities that we have considered including additional inequalities. For the sake of time and tests, as I said, there's a lot of instances. We restricted ourselves to run for valid inequalities, which is the capacity, the RCI, and RIPEC, for fractional solutions only for now, but we are testing them. We are testing for now the form constraints, and precedence constraints, and reachability constraints. But in particular, the two-path inequalities, we are not testing that for now. You think it's an alternative, a good alternative for this type of problem?
Could be working, actually not working. Incidentally, work we had with Maria Vito's work. They asked us to implement that, and it did not work that well. It was the first time we found. But you know the principle, right? You have to pair rows, and you try to see if there's a feasible path connecting those nodes, and if there's not, you solve feasibility problem actually, right? So, and then check whether you need two cuts, including the two paths actually to visit those two nodes. As far as I'm aware, for Dalroy problems, and I'm not sure if you do, but when you think about the best branch and cut algorithms, they have a basic, they start with 2 units formulation,
Okay.
and then they keep on adding cuts to ensure feasibility. And I think you guys somewhat tried to do that. So what I would have expected, I know you had time constraints, I know you have to learn. It's a master's project, so don't worry about that. I'm perfectly fine. But one thing that, ideally speaking, if you're going for branch and cut, I think it's natural to reuse or start from the best deterministic version, meaning the paper that read okay, there are other guys that, so I recommend also checking the dark literature, there can be something there. And it can be I mean, I'm not saying it's possibly going to improve, but if you think of a full branch and cut, yes, I think that should be at least considered just of course, not all inequalities should be playing a major role, that also deserves some attention. But since you guys have already studied that, already did that, then I'm good. I think I think it should be promising. But because if you were to in some pickup delivery problems, for example, in the VRP with some test pickup delivery, which is a different routing problem, ensuring that the route is not violated in the middle, it's a bit annoying. So you might be very tempted to add flow constraints, flow variables and flow constraints. And that's enough to kill the compact formulation. You have feasibility, but it becomes a model becomes better, right? So with this, we have shown years ago that by just ignoring them, you don't have any effect on the linear relaxation at all, and the solutions are seldom violated in industry solutions. So trying to map some of the constraints that, sometimes you do a lot of gymnastics to ensure feasibility, but then at the end of the day, they're not very critical if you think fully about the polyhedron and so on. Okay. Right? So any further advancements you guys can make, or any insights you can derive from this study, it's nice. Like to see, okay, we have this full branch and cut, we have experimented with this family of cuts, this works, this doesn't work. This is just worth separate the integer solutions. This one is interesting to go, and like capacity constraints, we all know that's nice to get in fractional solutions. And to what extent it's worth looking into the fractional solutions and so on, right? So there's a lot of things to see, and if you're looking for something more comprehensive, and if you have the time, and if someone, I don't know, joins you later or continues your work, that could be a direction, right? Okay. Now, another thing is color generation. That's I couldn't resist by asking that. If you think, PDPTW, because you don't have the maximum duration constraints, and the resource related to the pickup and delivery is somewhat manageable, as opposed to when you think of bike sharing problems, that's more complicated to address those crazy, to control the pickup deliveries. It's a bit annoying for pricing. I know that there are color generation-based version price, I don't even version touch with PDPTW. I know that VRP solver, there's a demo on that, right? If I'm not mistaken. So one thing that it can be done, since you guys have considered as the basic formulation for a cutting approach, the deterministic, the formulation of the deterministic case, you can do exactly the same. You take the demo of the VRP solver, and then you can use callbacks. Even in Julia, I think it should probably work. And you could just verify using similar idea. You have to define the graph, and you have to define that in terms of the x variable, no problem. It will do everything for you. And then later on, you just check whether the solution is robust feasible. Okay. If it's robust feasible, then you add the cuts. And then you, in principle, unless I'm missing something here, and please, I apologize in case I'm missing. I think that could be a good alternative. Okay. Because with your solver, at least you're more or less, you have a fantastic starting point. Because if you were to code everything, that would be very complicated. I'm not sure if it's how far it's hard to start with Peter's method using that interior point linear program solver, right? Which is very, very interesting too. But I'm not sure if you guys are looking into that, because Right. So regarding your problem, the one you have studied, what makes it really complicated when addressing robustness, when compared to other VRPs, robust VRPs? Okay.
Yeah, probably the thing that got us, that required a lot of effort, especially to model, to have our head around it and to understand everything about it, was the bearing constraints. So having the demands to be matched was one thing that got us a lot of effort to have, for example, the compact formulation. So we had to have a free index binary variable just to indicate if the request have deviated or not. So this thing is one that it's one of the things that was more complicated. And once we have this solved and we understood how to model the uncertainty set and how to model the compact formulation and how to implement it to calculate the worst case vehicle load, and then things started to work out.
Right.
So the pairing property was.
That is the key or the fundamental aspect.
Yes, for us, especially because of the robust optimization approach, it was the one thing that.
Right, right. I'm almost done. So if you think about other uncertainty sets, for example, a knapsack,
Yes.
how challenging would it be to adapt what you guys have done so far?
Yes, in terms of compact formulation, probably would be hard to do so because, as I said, for demand we had three index binary variable to indicate if the variable have deviated or not. For the knapsack, we need probably to say how was this deviation and how to ensure that the delivery have the exactly same level of deviation, and also the index for the compact formulation, we have a gamma index for the variable. So if the budget of the knapsack uncertainty set grows a lot, so the number of variables will grow exponentially, well, almost exponentially. In this, not exponentially, but will grow.
Pseudo polynomial?
Yes.
Sorry, is it pseudo polynomial or the growth that he's referring to?
In terms of the number of variables for the knapsack, no, I think it's polynomial.
But it's very, it will grow to a point that it becomes prohibitively.
Yes, probably, because for these, for just for the cardinality considered as uncertainty set for a lot of instances, we reach memory limit just to handle that much variables probably.
Yeah, so there are two directions that you might consider in the long term if you're doing PhD and other things. I'm not sure there is a robust vehicle routing problem in simultaneous pickup and delivery. If so, I'm not sure it has been done, as you wrote somewhere, it has been fully explored, right? You have wrote exactly these words when justifying the interest in studying this problem. When you think about the VRP simultaneous pickup and delivery, it includes the VRP with mixed pickup and delivery or mixed backhauls, in which you have either demand for delivery or pickup. So if you solve one, you're taking the other one for free. There's also VRP with backhauls, where you deliver everything and then you come back and collect.
Yes.
So maybe, and it's one thing that Maria knows it very well, I like doing generic stuff. So, so if you come that far, or this far, for example, if to address the dial right problem, you add that very nasty maximum right time constraint. But then you have already account for what is tricky in terms of robustness on the pairing aspect, as you mentioned. So I think looking at what has been done in the dark regarding robust optimization can be interesting because you may come up with, let's say, a compact formulation or something in that sense. That's more tricky for configuration, I know, but from version cut, again, you can do the exact same idea that I have just described. So I know it's really ambitious to look into a very generic framework for all types of pickup and delivery problems. But if you were to go into a different direction, I think my advice is to try to include as many classic variants, as much as canonical variants as possible, because problems are very similar, some of them, and sometimes there's just a small thing that you change. I understand that when you change a little bit, you can have a lot of methodological implications. That's very typical of our field. That's why prevents one to have ready-made solutions or black box solutions like you have in AI. So that's the nightmare of prescriptive analytics in practice, right? Every tiny detail you add, you might end up with so many consequences in practice. But still, try to think of, otherwise you'll come up with, oh, this is yet another method for yet another variant.
Yes.
And now there has been an increasing interest in robust optimization. At some point, one may ask, oh, here you go again, doing compact compilation, and see, there's sort of a recipe. So why not, since it's working every time, why not coming up with something more generic? So I think maybe it's worth looking into that direction, right? Okay? Yes. Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you guys for your patience. And then once again, congratulations. Very nice work. And it's of course it has been a pleasure to read your work and to be here trying to help your you guys call it in Portuguese dissertação and dissertation. In Portuguese, I know it can be misleading, but yeah.
Perfect. Thank you for
Yeah, thank you very much for all your comments, suggestions, questions. I'm sure you will reach Alex's dissertation. So now I'm moving to the next member of the jury. Maria, thank you very much again for accepting the invitation. First of all, to receive Alex there for a while, and then also continue this work and now be in the jury. Feel free to ask your questions.
Thank you, Pedro. Thank you, Alex. It is such a pleasure to see you after a bit more than 1 year since you arrived in VA.
Yes.
And I think around 1 year ago, we were preparing a different presentation for a conference. And seeing how you developed from that presentation to this presentation is amazing. Because you arrived already very competent and well prepared, preparing robust reformulations for your problem. But since then, you grew so much, both in terms of technical skills, developing these very complicated separation procedures, setting up your own benching cut, but also the way and the confidence in which you present these concepts, and the way in which you set up your presentation, and the way you have written both the paper submitted and this report shows a very deep level of maturity. You should be very proud. It means you've worked very hard and you are growing tremendously in terms of as a researcher. So congratulations for that, and to your supervisor, because you're doing a fantastic job, and I think you will keep on in the right trajectory. I have many comments on the formatting of the report. As Anand was saying, I think it's very neat, it's very well written, well structured, it's really, really good. Just one thing I found, maybe it's part of the standard formatting of the dissertations in this institution. I usually, in the references, I never use the et-al format when there are more than 3 authors, but possibly something that is part of your customary formatting in this institution. In that case, you can leave it. As you know, we have been working on this paper for a long time, so I'm very familiar, and I know why we made some choices, sometimes very much dependent on the amount of time available, and the fact that you were growing in this process and you were learning new techniques. So I will not discuss much how you could have done more or different in that problem, but maybe we can discuss some of your choices and how these choices could be then presented also in practice or brought forward in research terms. Anna was talking on the choice of budget of uncertainty and which kind of uncertainty is said. And I think that's a viable question that also a reviewer might ask. And in those terms, I would like to ask you to comment on 2 aspects. So the first one is, yes, why did you choose then this budget? This type of uncertainty set. Yes. And the second one that I think is trickier is you're basically asking a practitioner to decide on a budget of uncertainty. So how many arcs will get the worst case, and how many demands will get the worst case.
Yes.
How would you recommend them to pick a value then in that case? Because this uncertainty set has this weakness, right?
Yes.
So what would you say about this choice, and how in practice then you will set this budget of uncertainty?
Perfect. Yes, thank you, Maria. Very. Yes, so one of the drawbacks of dealing with robust optimization is selecting the right choice of modeling the uncertainty sets. So we have many options. So we have a work from 2020 from one that models the CRP with different, many different uncertainty sets. And yes, one way of approaching this is because we first wanted to, one way of selecting the budget of the cardinality constraint and uncertainty set was that we first wanted to come up with polynomial formulations, compact formulations, and the work of Pedro has a neat proposal for dealing with this, especially for compact formulations. So yes, one way of justifying it, so the selection of the budget of the cardinality constraint was in a way extending their work to a generalization of the PRP. So when we have so one way of dealing with this is this extension, and somehow, yes, when we first thought about the project 2.5 years ago, almost, one of the ideas were to deal with different uncertainty sets as well. So probably was one idea to deal with the knapsack uncertainty set. But then, as Rafael Campos also have the effort to come up with compact formulations for the knapsack uncertainty with different formulations, we saw that to adapt this approach for the pick up and deliver problem, as I said to Professor Allen, to match the level of deviation is quite a hard thing to do. We expected, so we probably went, we choose to went more deep dive in the cardinality constraint and then trying to analyze more aspects of this instead of going to a broad approach. And regarding the practice, this is the robust optimization. When Pedro first told me about robust optimization, I thought, okay, so now the decision maker needs to really decide on a lot of things, and we have we want to build formulations and methods so we can assist them, but then they need to bring the decisions to us. So one thing is that since we do not have much data, because if we were probably applying stochastic programming to do that, was the feeling, because probably the industry, one that is in the industry has a lot of personal knowledge of how the customers behave, and if we have somehow the decision maker knows that some customers have a certain high probability of have a higher demand, so probably would go for feeling, which is not this analytical answer, but probably is one that I think in industry it's an advantage to gather the personal knowledge of the decision maker. Probably go for that.
So your answer is about data availability. Robust optimization gives you such an advantage with respect to stochastic optimization approaches, which you need a distribution that is still worth setting a budget of uncertainty instead of having the whole distributions.
Yes.
Okay. One question that probably the most technical, Anna stole some of my very good ones, but
I promise that was not intentional.
no, we are good friends, I'll still be friends. Page 22, you mentioned something interesting because you say when I go and linearize the robust cuts for the travel time uncertainty. You say the precedence relation between the pickup and the delivery nodes of a request is enforced by constraint 4112.
Yes.
So you basically add this constraint for 112 is already giving you information about the precedence between the pickup and the delivery nodes.
Yes.
Would it then be possible to remove some of the previous constraints for the formulation? Because you have already imposed that in the deterministic version, right?
Great, yes. Yes, actually, yes. Great question, great question. Because we have indicated that we use the precedence constraints, see 407, and actually, no, actually, yes. Actually, yes. Let me just double check. In formulation from 419 to 4113, we say that we use, from the deterministic formulation, we use 402, which are the degree constraints, and 408 to 418. So 408 to 418. 408 would be the variable constraints. So yes, we have replaced constraints 407, which are the precedence constraints. We have just replaced with 4112. So with this constraint, we ensure the precedence constraints.
With the
4112.
12. So do you still need both 409 and 4010? Because I think you need 408 to say they need to be in the same route, right? I'm just wondering if 409 and 410 are still necessary then?
Yes, they are. Actually, these constraints from 408 to 4011, they are needed to ensure that both pickup nodes and delivery nodes are in the same vehicle, are visited by the same vehicle. So what they do is the variable VI, the index I is for all customers. So VI will indicate the first customer visited in a route when the same vehicle is visited the node I. So they ensure that the pickup node in constraints 408, the delivery node, the first visited customer of the vehicle that visits the delivery and the pickup are the same. So they match the vehicle. And then, so we guarantee.
408, right? That says.
408, yes.
Okay.
408.
409 and 410?
And 410, yes. And then 409 and 4010. 409 and 4010, they ensure they are just, I saw in a word that is called copy constraints. They ensure that when we first have, for example, with the left-hand side of 409, we ensure that when we leave the vehicle and go to J, the VJ assumes it's the index J, the value of the index J.
Okay.
So the remaining of these constraints, they keep the value of the first. They copy the value for all variables.
409 is necessary.
Yes, 409 is necessary.
It's very clever. This is their model, right?
Yeah, the model is very smart.
Yes. And then, okay, so with these constraints, we ensure that pickup and delivery nodes are visited by the same vehicle. And then, since they are visited by the same vehicle, constraints 4112 ensure that the delivery is visited after the pickup.
Okay. I still need to check 410, but I think you gave me such a good answer for 409 that I can let it go. No, excellent. It was a very good answer. That one is stolen. So, one thing that was interesting to notice is in your computational results, you have the systematic aspect. I think we already discussed it, but I think it's interesting to bring that up. That is very counterintuitive because the instances with demand uncertainty and both uncertainties are relatively easy and less risky, but then travel time on its own
Yes.
is less risky.
Yes.
Do you want to elaborate on why this strange
Yes.
behavior?
Sure. This is one of the things that Professor Allen has told, that we have a lot of instances, and we have tried to have a best method for all of them, and we lost some opportunity to explore more about the optimal solution. How is this optimal solution structured? So one aspect would be that the gamma, say, the definition of the gamma for the demand uncertainty is the number of requests that are allowed to create, while the number of the gamma for travel time uncertainty is the number of arcs. So in the same problem, we have, for example, for 5 requests, we are the gamma will go up to 5. The value of gamma for demand uncertainty will go up to 5, and it's the maximum number of requests that has. But then, in terms of nodes, we have 10 nodes, 10 customers nodes, so we have 100 arcs. So when we solve for one gamma q equals 1 and gamma t equals 1, we are dealing in somehow with 2 completely different measures. So we have 1 out of 100 and 1 out of 5 to ensure the robustness. So somehow this is one thing that probably we missed, to analyze what would be the perfect balance between like the percentage, how representative is the gamma in terms of the all available values. So to define the proper gamma and then analyze. So somehow probably will generate different results, because, for example, would be 1 out of 5 is 20, would be 25%, 20% for would be gammas for t would be 20. So a completely different values. So probably would be in this understanding probably somehow of the structure.
Generating instances, it's a problem of its own, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, that's true.
The other question I had is about these, because again, you did such a wide investigation, and you have worked always at the boundaries between the deterministic and robust solutions. And we were quite surprised when we saw that actually we can still solve very large instances, but compared to the deterministic that they are, right? So it was surprising that the robustness doesn't cost too much in terms of reach.
Yes.
So what would you say works better for deterministic version that doesn't work for robust, and other way around? How does the reach changes?
In terms of methods, you say, or in terms of?
With the methods you have tested, right? Because you have basically both. I mean, you have let's say the compact formulation, right? Because the other one cannot be compared. But for the compact formulation, you can both use the deterministic problem and the robust one. Do you find that there is a difference of reach and the capabilities of the methods?
Yes, we can see somehow that in some cases, when you see, for example, figure 1b, that in some cases, we do not solve the deterministic, for some level, number of requests, we do not solve deterministic instances. But then, when we include the robust aspect, even though it brings some complexity for the formulation, for the method, because we need to account for any possibility of within the uncertainty set, we result in sometimes more optimal solutions. So yes, one guess probably of mine would be about the feasible solution space. So when we have a deterministic one, we have probably a larger feasible solution space. And when we ensure that, okay, not everything is as is, so we probably need some solution. The deterministic solution is probably not feasible anymore when we have uncertainty. So we start to reduce somehow the feasible space, and as we implement everything with Gurobi, and Gurobi do a great job on finding good heuristics and good cuts. Especially, this is one of the answers actually for Alan's comment about using the deterministic formulation as basis, is because the Gurobi finds a lot of cuts. So probably when we implement additional variables and additional constraints, then Gurobi tries to find more cuts and somehow results in better performance than the deterministic one.
I think it's actually a very good idea of also trying better initial solutions and trying better solvers to incorporate your framework. Yeah, and also try the deterministic constraints into the branching cap to see if they help.
Because of that certain family of inequalities, if you're polynomial, you can have everything a priori. Usually the solver takes advantage of that and finds cuts and enhances even more the linearization. This is what is
so Anna gave us a lot of hints on what to try to go a bit higher and bigger. What if you want to go huge though with this problem? And you want to solve the ginormous instances? In which direction would you push your research?
That's a great question. I confess that I was humbled to think the instances that we have on hand. So with 75 requests was a struggle. Yes, but as Ananda said, we later saw that the deterministic literature for the PDPTW have walked towards branching price and column generation algorithms. So if the deterministic variants have taken advantage of column generation and they have completely stopped to work on branching price, on branching cut and compact formulations, good branching cut and good compact formulations for this problem, the deterministic variants probably a way to go for huge instances would probably be branching price, column generation, and yes, I think it's probably branching price would be the best call for. Not sure how it's done actually. We didn't have the chance to deep dive into these how it works. Just some overall comments of some of my colleagues, and not sure how would be implemented for the PDPTW, robust PDPTW, but probably would be one of the solutions for this.
The last question, then I stop torturing you. It's a difficult one because it's purely conceptual. So let's imagine that we fast forward you in 3 years' time when you are a doctor, not even you're an MC.
3 years?
Yeah, very fast.
Okay.
And you have your own student, and he's going to start to work exactly on this problem. And he's going to collect the results and work on the integrated framework for all. When would you start teaching your work? I mean, which papers would you begin to read? Which course should you start working with? How would you teach what you've done?
Well, yes, that's a
probably this question also is a very good
yeah, probably the hardest question is not about the work. But yes, the work of Hoppe, although it has some in my opinion, actually some deficiencies on explaining and describing a bit more on the algorithms and everything. It was because of the constraints and how it deals with invisible paths and everything. I thought for the PDPTW, it was, Pedro sent me this paper the first time I talked to him, and I still use it every time. I have it printed in my desk, and I read it every time I have the chance. So probably somehow eating their findings every day somehow would be a good way of understanding the people in the liver problem. Yes, and the vertical. And yes, it couldn't. I couldn't suggest the chapter of the VRP, the VRP book. The 2014 it's actually more recent than the topic.
You know, fun fact, I was visiting my Southampton while she was writing
Right.
that, and I helped her.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, that chapter helped me a lot because not only the parent pickup in the liver problem was addressed, but the whole idea, and that chapter helped me to understand even analyzing and understanding other papers like Dono's paper by Sharon and everything. So that chapter was really great.
Yeah, so that will take.
Wait, a first read, yes, it was great. And for robust optimization, clearly, Bert Simonson work is hard to understand, but it helped me to understand how was robust optimization really about. So Bert Simonson team practice and your work was really the
Forgot what.
yeah.
For two actually from this side.
It's because I already told you a lot about this. Yes. Pedro's work helped me understand how is it applied to robust to routing problems. But the robust optimization overall, yes, the Bert Simonson, even though it's really hard to understand everything, and I still don't sometimes, some parts, but it's really good.
I'm really proud of your progress again. My question is finished.
Thank you, Mandy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maria. Again, I'm sure I will reach a lot, even more, Alex's dissertation. So thank you very much. It was really nice to hear everything. Now, the next member of the jury is Luciano. So thank you again for being such a very good supervisor, co-supervisor for Alex. I think you were really helpful in reaching the problem in a way that we wouldn't expect. So thank you very much. Thank you. It was really nice to have you on board with us. Thank you. So yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Pedro, for inviting me for being part of this work. And it's very hard to talk to jury after Marianne because they have asked so nice questions. First of all, I'd like to congratulate Alex for the nice work. When I first came across this work like 8 months ago, in your qualifying exam, the results that you had, they were coded in Julia. You had several compact formulations you coded, and you had all these experiments. And you wrote in the next text, you said, okay, the next step is to translate this code into C++, and then code a branching cut using C++. At the time, I was like, okay, you are planning to code everything in C++, but you did, and it was very nice, seeing you work. You are very motivated. You are very a hard worker, really. you kept like coding and working, and every week that when we were like meeting, you always came with nice questions and nice findings, and like well done really. And the results and everything that you've accomplished and presented in your work, they're like really nice. And yeah, so then congratulate you for this work. In terms of the work in itself, we've already like discussed some things, but I think that yeah, so like your work like is like done, you submit it to the Twitter, so nice. But I think that perhaps I think that you've done a lot of things, but they're not here. And yeah, so since you are presenting a dissertation rather than like a paper as a dissertation, I think that you have space for that. In the paper, you had like the page limit, like 30 page limit, so you had to remove all the stuff. But like here that you have space, I think that would be nice to add some things. And as I mentioned before, even if your work is not the work for starting, but I think that you could provide as much details as possible. And like, for example, I have here like the yeah, and I know that there's all the time and all the stuff, you know, but I think that if you just combine some things that you've done in your like the qualifying exam and you move it to the dissertation, I think that yeah, you can just combine and there are some things that were improved for the paper, so you can just correct this in the qualified exam. But for example, there are some definitions and some concepts that in the qualifying are nice presented and nicely presented. And for example, this is even like one question that was discussed like the other day, like with Anna, and that also that a question that you had during the PPO, and it's like, why do you need to use the side just like integer? Why that?
Okay.
Because if you have the budget integer, you can keep this and all. So there are these specific details they are discussed in your qualifying exam. You can just move it. So for example, my suggestion like would be if you take so for example, I know that in the preliminary results you didn't get nice results for the visualization. That's like so far until papers work the best, like you said, of the art like proposed. But still, I think that it would be nice to present it because like you had it, because like you had it. So one thing that I would do, perhaps, and if of course, if it does not take a lot of time, it'd be like let you present in that like starting from the qualifying document. You have like all the formulation, the president formulation, the max flow formulation, not stuff, and then in the yeah in the content part like formulation, the robust section you present and you say and you then provide all of the things and in the same way as you conducted the reader in the qualifying exam text. Say okay, we have this preliminary results. You can like in this case not even like present it, you can put it in the appendix, but you can just say okay, like I have this, and then you go for the entity formulation because it's the best one, and then you go. So you can try to provide some insights and describe a bit more. Also, like the other part, there is this part where you explain how to obtain like all these sets and all the stuff. I remember correctly, we fixed something like for the paper, like to correct something. So you can take this, insert it into the like the other around you. You can take like the qualified test exam and fix that thing, but explain in as much details as possible because I was reading you have like you take more time to explain stuff and you say okay, I come from this and I do this and I do that and then like conduct and explain with more this. Yeah, give more details and give some insights because like you have space and time so you can describe this and it's not a matter of writing everything because you have this just put there and combine also like one thing that Adam mentioned before, and I agree, is providing like figures. And then there is one, and I think that it was one question that I even asked during the qualifying exam, is the idea that because you propose this, you have the way of computing like the worst case. And it's nice because you don't need to do this in ON and do this in O1. So it's not straightforward because it's not like intuitive, because you expect that the customer, like the node with the high deviation is the one that will be like the worst case, but not the case. So depending on the route, and then it will give the result if you like present a figure and show and explain, because like you have this already, so just and then put that. So the text like is very well like written and detailed and is structured. So all these comments are just for like making it like more comprehensible, and also like more useful for the people that like it is like you need the current like state is very nice already. Just giving more details for someone that's coming like after you to take it, and having a nice point. And if Maria asks this same questions to our student like in 5 years, you're gonna say, okay, start with the
wasn't equals to
if in some years Maria asks the same question to our student, like the student can say, you can start with now with dissertation because it's so well explained and everything. Yeah. So other than that, yeah, so I congratulate you, and yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Luciano, very much. So it's my turn now. I have one question. Oh, well, it's not about the work because there will be the same thing already. But if you compare now the Alex from 2 years and a half, so the expectations of Alex about what would be his master's, what would he learn, what would be his life in 2 years and a half later, and compare with the Alex now, what is the conclusion?
Oh yes, in terms of my personal experience, I wasn't even dreaming about going abroad. So that's one thing that every time I wake up, I remember that I was in England. So that's really great. So it was a great experience, and being some time with Maria was professional wise and personal wise, it was great. In terms of research, yes, I was somehow expecting a little bit more, probably. Not because I was with a high expectation about myself, but because I was not understanding yet what was to be faced. And then now, even though I don't have, like, for example, I was expecting somehow publish that paper before the defense. But in that time, at that time, I thought that the published paper would not be even as good as this that we wrote together. So the expectation was to study more broad aspects, so different uncertainty sets, different approaches, different problems. And when we deep dive, and when I deep dive in this problem, and I understood the conceptual structure of everything and how it works, and understanding why do some method works better than other, and coding everything in C++, coding everything in Julia was quite an experience. I had just the experience of Julia, and yes, I'm pretty sure that I am a completely different person that I was expecting to be, but now I am for sure much better than if my plan worked out.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I can say it was quite successful. Yeah, as Maria said, we can see the progress. Maria's saw the progress of 1 year, saw the progress of 2 years. And I remember the Alex that came here and the Alex that's leaving now. So the success and how much you learned, how much you evolved, it's a lot. So congratulations for that. I can say you're a consistent leader of several methods because you have several challenges. So I think we told that from the qualifying exam. You had several challenges with this method. First of all, I have to learn about a new problem. With ERP, it's not a new problem, right? And there's a literature about that, so I have to learn and read a lot of this. And I have to learn about robust optimization. It's not something easy to learn, right? And you have to learn about how to put them together and come up with a new formulation, a new type of method. And for having that method, you have to learn what's a branching guide. Haven't implemented that before, haven't learned about it before. And you have to learn a new language for implementing. And it was everything so very quick, even though it was 2 years and a half. Because I mentioned 5 things, so you have 6 months for each of them. Yeah, so it was a lot to learn. So congratulations. We're not sure about the results yet. We still have but as a supervisor, I have to say I'm quite. I consider it was an excellent result because you could win all these battles that I mentioned. So congratulations.
Can I just add a fun fact?
Yes.
Alex, I don't know if you know that. Alex contacted me January 16, 2022 on LinkedIn, and he sent me a message in English. Later, so it's not 2.5, it's 3 years. So later that year, I met him with Fernando in Juiz de Fora. And I can tell myself the difference after that encounter. I met him later on at Euro and other places. So as someone that was just, speaking as a spectator, not someone who was going through the process, I can tell that you, in such a short time span, you had really evolved, grow, and became more mature, and realized that you could talk Portuguese like me. Just this, feedback. I think it's important, right? And so well done.
And I was in the jury of the Alex final graduate project, and he was presenting in English.
Yes.
Me and Ruben.
Ruiz, yes.
Yeah.
And we were in the board, and it was already a very nice work. He posted his
Very nice.
project, so.
It was destined to come to the UK.
And now he did a good job for the master, so congratulations. So, anyone has any questions from the audience for Alex? Alex, your final words before you have the decision.
Sorry if I said something wrong. Yes, if I did something wrong, it's because it's not my native language. So thanks. I'm looking forward for the decision.
Okay, so I'll ask everyone to leave us now for a while, and after a few minutes I'll come back. A tough question discussion here. We came with the following result. The dissertation presents innovative and exceptional contributions for the literature, indicating maturity and excellence in the developed work. So the final result is that you were approved. Congratulations. Yeah, go ahead.
I was expecting the results to say something. If I wasn't approved.
Okay.
No, thank you. Yes, I will address the committee individually, so please, thank you very much. Your guidance was crucial for my development as a person, especially, I would say, and it was a really great. I'll say 3 years because of our first contact in the committee. But yes, since then, I already knew that he was a great person, and I was glad to be supervised by you for this whole period. I'm really glad, really honored. And I hope you remember of me for the whole life. And especially the following years.
Okay.
Message received. But yeah, it was a pleasure as well to be in England with you. And yes, I'm super happy to have you here and to have you as part of committee, especially because it's in person. And I hope this time, even that it's short, will be great for you as well. But it was really great to meet you, and you helped me a lot. That's awesome. Professor Island, as you said, we had the first contact being called awkward. When you were speaking Portuguese, I was all about I mistake. But yes.
Paraíba, we speak Portuguese.
Okay, I'll keep in mind. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being part of the meeting. It's really a pleasure. Really famous guy to be here. So it's an honor to have you here. Professor Luciano, it's a great time, even the short amount of time for us to develop it, but it was intense. And this last 8 months, about 8 months, was great. And your supervision was, as you say, we say in Portuguese, but I don't know if it's the same thing, but I'll translate literally. It was the division of waters. So for me to implement everything in C++ and the branch and cut, your guidance was crucial. So thank you very much for your help. And also for my colleagues, thank you very much. I will not say every one of them because if I miss one, but yes, all of you helped me a lot. Those who helped will know what I'm saying. So thank you very much. Thanks for my partner. There was I'll be short now because Zebra did a huge sacrifice when we first started the masters. And if I may, I can say some words in Portuguese. Or I think my family. Okay, so my family is online, so minha família está online. Eu gostaria de agradecer. Eu acho que se eu falasse em inglês seria menos emocional, eu estou ficando emocionado, mas foram 2 anos e meio, 2 anos e meio muito intensos para a gente, principalmente pela minha vinda para cá. Apesar da Débora ter vindo me ajudar bastante no começo, foi incrível o apoio dos meus pais e do meu irmão. Então, meu pai Valfredo, minha mãe Valéria e meu irmão Douglas foi muito importante. E toda a minha família, meus primos e minhas irmãs estão aí, todos ajudaram bastante em todos os aspectos da minha vida. Então, muito obrigado. Thank you very much for your patience. And I have some hints for you. This is also condition. This is also condition for the result. Yes.
Everything is legal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
So yes, we are ready for the photo.
Sure.
From close friends to
Oh.
The coffee break.
Another coffee break.